Hi, my name is Chris Nglezu, and you're listening to my personal field recordings from expeditions along some of the most beautiful freshwater rivers on our planet. Everything you hear is from the river and narrated by me. No AI voice here. So sit back, enjoy, take in the experience, and feel free to share your comments and feelings with me. I really hope that you can also take a moment to subscribe, and thank you for joining me. Enjoy. The moment the reflection of the morning sun touches the surface of the river, you understand why they call it whitewater. The milky reflection of the silt-laden flow makes you wonder how any aquatic creature navigates a daily existence here. Immediately, I understand the necessity of the long whiskers of the pima-loaded catfish and the echolocation used by the river dolphins with their tiny eyes, almost pointless in such a river. I continuously observe for other insights and wonder what lessons are in store on this 10-day journey into the deepest jungles of the Amazon basin. I've finally departed, and I have the overwhelming realization that I've been waiting for this moment my whole life. I am here, heading to untouched earth along the mighty Solimoes, probably the most famous whitewater river on earth. I'm living my dream. Having travelled from Colombia's mountainous capital, situated under the majesty of Mount Montserrat, we stayed a few days in the tropical city of Leticia in Amazonas state before beginning the first leg of our trip into Brazil. In our group are 5 fish hobbyists from all over the globe. Marcel and Enrique of the well-known blogging site Wild Fish Aquarium from Argentina. John, a passionate Australian fish keeper and photographer with a special appreciation of herpetology. Tom, a young fish hobbyist from Berkshire in the UK. And myself. We're assisted by our Brazilian boat owner Domingo and our guide Esteban, or Stephen, a Colombian boatman of native Ticuna descent. We found ourselves here alongside our expedition leader, the late ichthyological champion of Amazon exploration, Heiko Blair. Leaving from the port at Tabatinga just before sunrise, we eventually reach the Rio Jandiatuba, and as we advance southward along the lower reaches, time and time again we continue to pass illegal gold mining barges which ruthlessly upheave the riverbed and banks, causing devastating erosion and destruction of habitats. Powerful pumps suck anything and everything from the river and project it over filters in hope of finding the tiniest speck of gold, all at the expense of any nearby creature and the health of the surrounding ecosystems. Along the Solimoes, we even saw whole sections of weakened, tree-filled land spontaneously plummet downwards into the river. Shallower than it's ever been, huge dry sandbanks of what was formerly riverbed are now exposed. We set up camp shortly before nightfall along the first creek, where we make some brief collections. Burrowed into the leaves along the bank was a lovely Apistogramma species, accompanied by several other species including a red-eyed textra, as well as other characoids. Even though the sun had not quite left us, the fish were prepared well in advance of the approaching darkness, and I observed individual severums of the genus Heros, safely tucked in under fallen branches and large leaves to avoid predation during the night. In the coming days, the further upward we travelled along this extremely meandering river, the wilder the forest becomes. The higher the sabre trees stand towering over the canopies in all their magnificence, and after more than 130 turns of the river, over 2,400 kilometers, we are willingly surrounded by uncompromised primary rainforest. And yet, we are still to even reach the tributary we wish to explore. Along with our supplies, which included fresh fruit, rice, black tea, biscuits, among other things, we catch daily fish from the river to eat, either as a soup or grilled over a fire. In this lost haven, I feel such a natural bond with the surrounding environment. The atmosphere is devoid of any unnatural sounds, and the nature all around is an incredible feeling which evokes many emotions and instincts. Some of the fish were very tasty as well as beautiful, and we stopped many times each day to collect fish in various locations for the purpose of studying rather than feasting. The creeks where we make our collections are significantly different to the main river. Instead of the soft sandbanks and white water, they are lined with hundreds of seasons worth of leaf litter. The vast majority of the small and juvenile fish species hide and reside within it. The dry brown leaves and sunken logs are responsible for the acidic black water, and it is here, in these habitats, where we repeatedly find so many aquarium favourites. On one of our collections, in the deep leaf litter which lined the entire bank, we encountered small groups of the hatchetfish, Carnegiella marthae. We also found a lovely young earth-eater, Satanoperca papatera, as well as Pyrrhulina, Titocharax kochuai, which immediately after capture had an incredibly bright electric blue colour. This faded quite quickly once in the bag for a little while. A Pseutrogaster species, one of the toothless characins, and many shrimp. The water parameters at this creek were pH of 6.33, conductivity 36 microsiemens, and temperature around 26.5 degrees C. At another location, also in the lower reaches of the Jandiatuba, we took the opportunity to study an isolated lake completely surrounded by licania trees, the fruits of which are a very common source for food for many fish species. At the water's edge, we found a handmade native canoe, possibly left there for fishing purposes. Not one to miss an opportunity, I took some time to row around this lake, studying the habitat closely and experiencing, for the first time in my life, the wonderful stillness and serene peacefulness of being in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by nothing but nature. Only occasionally did I hear the gasp of the pirarucu, Arapaima gaigas, which survive easily in such lakes by using their labyrinth organ to breathe atmospheric oxygen. I observed small groups of 3 to 4 Mesonauta here, swimming just outside the edges of the partially submerged bushes, as well as individuals and small groups of young Boulangerella, scanning for prey along the surface under the protective shade of overhanging branches. By the time we finished our collections, we were once again in the darkness of night, and among the fish collected this evening, we found Satanoperca, Cyclosoma, Mesonauta, Apistogramma, Crenicycla, Acaronia, and Hypselicara, as well as smaller fish species such as Nanostomus trifasciatus, Hippoptopoma, Iguanodectes, tiny doradids, various Hyphesobrychon, Chilodus, and other characoid species. In every sweep of our nets, we were able to find tiny specimens which included many juveniles, as well as some fully grown fish of exceptionally small size. For example, a juvenile needlefish and adult Nanostomus equus. We also found what appears to be a new species of Corydorus. It most closely resembles Corydorus lamberti. However, the closest recorded populations of sea lamberti are found over 800 kilometers east, just north of the Lago Rimanchi in Peru. We'll have to wait and see what this one turns out to be. Every night after collecting fish, we made an excuse to find other interesting terrestrial species living in the jungle, and this night was no different. We found many insects and arachnids, amphibians, and on one night we even found a young caiman crocodilus. A really special moment, which I'll never forget, was a brief encounter along a creek deep in the rainforest where I came across a young female basilisk. As we navigated up the creek, which was quite difficult due to the many fallen trunks below the surface, I went to hold the closest branch to stabilize myself, and at first did not even see this extremely well camouflaged lizard sitting on a thin branch. We introduced ourselves politely, and I wished her luck on her journey before letting her go. A very special and precious moment for me. Particularly noteworthy from the trip was a discovery made along the lower reaches of the Jandiatuba by Marcelo Fernandez, Enrique Soler and myself. Hidden deep inside the leaf litter, only at the mouth of a small blackwater creek, we found several specimens of what is now a newly documented occurrence of the neon tetra Parachirodon inesi within its distribution range. This preferred locale was at the mouth of the creek where the tannin-stained water met the mixed water of the adjoining lake. While the three of us remained at the mouth to see what we could find, the others ventured into the creek for a kilometre or so and surprisingly found no neons there. This indicated that the specimens we found may indeed be living only in the mixed white and black waters of the attached lake. This is quite unheard of for this species, as they tend to be found in black or clear waters or mixtures thereof, and this lake's composition had a considerable whitewater influence from its connection to the Jandiatuba. Along with the neons, and also tucked away inside the leaf litter, we found cichlids, such as Crenicycla, Apistogramma, Mesonauta, possibly Mirificus, accompanied by Nanostomus, Hyphesobrycon, and other characoids, as well as young Hopleus. The water parameters at the mouth of the creek were pH 6.25, conductivity of 16 microsiemens, and a temperature of about 30 degrees C. In the lake itself, we came across a large, unidentified stingray, hovering in the shallows, and as our boat approached, we realized that it was no longer alive. It had severe bite marks on its disc, but on closer inspection we saw that it had died as a result of consuming a large Prochelodus found stuck in its mouth. As part of my job researching and formulating diets at NatureKind, I am obliged to have a great deal of knowledge on the natural dietary components of many ornamental fish species. And bearing in mind that the typical food items of stingrays from the Solimoes region in general include fish of up to around 8 centimeters total length, this large Prochelodus was a very ambitious meal at 20 to 25 centimeters long. But it's a reflection of the opportunistic nature of many fishes during the food abundance which occurs when many fish species are restricted to smaller areas as water recedes through the dry season. Equally insightful and a consistent feature of the creek biotopes we explored is the invaluable presence of the leaf litter, not only for its contribution to the water chemistry, but as a protective haven for small and juvenile fish species. This is something which is underestimated by the average hobbyist. Even the leafiest of aquaria may often only include just a few leaves, and these are usually scattered across the substrate. But the reality of the daily existence of most of the smaller species we captured is that they spend most of their time during the dry season exploring the dense protective labyrinth of millions of leaves along the riverbank, discarded year after year by the overhanging trees. Had we not plunged our nets far into the leaves to catch them, we most certainly would not have seen the fish at all. Without these leafy retreats, many of these species would not be able to survive predation. After more than 2 decades of fish keeping, over half of which, around 15 to 20 years now, has been dedicated to biotope aquariums, it's not until experiencing the ecosystemic nature of the habitats and observing the behaviors and adaptations of the fish firsthand that I could truly grasp why each species dwells where it does, and the relationship between the fish and their biotopes is the way it is. An obvious example being the wonderfully leaf-like appearance of the eye-catching fish known as the leaf fish, Monoceros polyacanthus. After spending so much time immersed in the jungle, there is an overpowering understanding of the symbiotic essence of Amazonia. The way each species or genus fits neatly into its own niche, sometimes a very limited and often very specific place, just as its relatives have done in the same way for thousands of years, provides invaluable insight for any fish keeper ready to build a home for them. I see the hours spent creating perfect artistic aquascapes and wonder what we could achieve if the time was spent building a biotope for the contentment of the fish rather than aesthetically pleasing aquariums for hobbyists. I guess if I could bring any one thing to the forefront, it would be inspiration. Inspiration to see more passion for nature reflected in our aquariums. Not just love for the fish or their pretty colors, but for the biotopes which made them that way.